about people being discriminated against, we typically think of people being treated differently because of their race or because of their gender or even their sexual orientation. But rarely do we think of people being treated differently because they've been accused of breaking the law. But in many states, including Illinois, being accused of breaking the law can make it more difficult for you to get certain jobs. It can make it more difficult for you to get money for school. It can even make it more difficult for you to find a place to live. And it's that last point, trying to find a place to live when you've been accused of breaking the law, that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about in this segment. And with that, I'm Sylvia Snowden. I'm a very proud employee here at CAN TV, and you're watching Political Forum. I am thrilled to have as today's guest on Political Forum, Cook County Commissioner Dennis Deer. Hello, Commissioner Deer.
Hello, how are you? And thanks for having me out today. It is certainly a delight to be here, Ms. Sylvia.
Well, it is our great pleasure to have you, especially as a first-time guest. So I'm happy you're here, and I hope you have a fantastic experience and that you will agree to join us several more times in the future going forward.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to spend some time today talking about the Just Housing Amendment. And let's do this. Let's start this. Let's pretend that I have been convicted of a crime. Tell people at home what life used to be like for me if I was trying to rent an apartment prior to the Just Housing Amendment.
It was rough. So let me take a couple of steps back before I answer that. So we have to realize that incarcerated men and women have been, for all practical purposes, persecuted for a while, simply because they've committed a crime, they've served their time, and they've come out. The United States is one of the most incarcerated countries in the world. We represent 5% of the general population, yet 25% of the global incarcerated population. The feds release 600,000 people each year from incarceration. Most of them look like me. And we'll bring it closer to home. Illinois releases 26,000 people a year who look like me, and they come to 5 zip codes, 3 on the west side, 2 on the south side. I live in one of the zip codes here in North Lawndale. Now, I'll answer, that's in part what the Just Housing, what it was like before the Just Housing Initiative. All of those individuals coming out, some of them have burned bridges with all of their family members, and they don't have any place to go. And many of them were trying to find apartments, but when you do a background check, guess what pops up? The fact that you have a felony, the fact that you have a criminal background, and those landlords or realtors who were acting as agents of landlords would not let that individual rent an apartment. So it promoted homelessness in Chicago.
So if I had been, if not accused, but if I had actually committed a crime and I had come home and come out, I was looking for a place to live, I could find myself on the streets, basically, because nobody would want to rent to me. And that was what life was like.
And many people have.
Wow. Okay, and so that's what life was like before the Just Housing Amendment was passed. Tell us how life is different now that you passed this amendment.
Well, I think what the Just Housing Amendment has done was to help open up the process, number one, for people who had backgrounds. Now, there isn't as much discrimination against them, but keep in mind, this just went into effect January the 1st. We still need some time to work out the kinks, but I tell you what, it's a lot better than what it was. Or shows like this help to put the word out, because some people still don't know about the Just Housing Amendment. And so we want people to know about it and to know that they have a right, even if they have a background, to access affordable and appropriate housing. So again, to answer your question, it's a lot better than what it was, but it can even get better.
Okay, and so let's talk specifically about some of the ways that this amendment has made life better for people who've been convicted of a crime. If I apply to rent a home, can the landlord see that I've been convicted of a crime? Is that still accessible to landlords?
Yes, they can still see that you've been convicted of a crime, but they can't hold it against you.
Okay, and so when you say they can't hold it against me, then that means that there's a point in the process which they have to let me get so far before they decide
right
whether or not they want to rent to me. Okay, and so then they wouldn't let that stop me. And so this was something else that I found out that
That's
I
right.
thought,
Yeah, once you get so far along in that process, um, they'll get to the point where they're making a decision, but they can't make a decision solely on the fact that I have a background.
okay, and I want to ask this too because I found this out when I was researching. So let's say that I've never actually been convicted of a crime because we're talking about backgrounds. Let's say I was never convicted, but let's just say that I was arrested 5 times. Is that something that before this passed, a landlord could hold against me? He could see that I had just been arrested and decide he didn't want to rent to me?
Absolutely, because a landlord will see someone with a bunch of arrests as potential riffraff. And I can remember when we were putting this together, I'm a landlord too. So I was looking at it from both angles. I'm a person that works with ex incarcerated men and women, but I was also a landlord. And there were some pieces in there that certainly we had to be empathetic to landlords, but landlords also have to be empathetic to those who have backgrounds who have pushed outside and are trying to move on with their lives.
Okay, and to be clear, landlords can still refuse you. So this doesn't make it so you can never tell someone with a background no, but it does make the process more fair. Is that what we're saying basically? You can still get refused.
You can still get confused just like you and I can be refused. But this brings fairness and equity to the process.
Okay, and so I find it interesting that you are also a landlord because I did, when researching, find, well, I'll ask it this way. Were landlords, generally speaking, and realtors, generally speaking, happy with you and happy with the board when this passed?
Well, I won't say that they weren't happy when it passed, but during the process, they were against it. And they came down full fledged to the county board meeting to let us know that they were against it. Now, I think that once we came to a conclusion, there was some that really didn't agree with it, but it was a lot better than what it was. So
Oh,
we had some that actually came around.
okay, and so let's talk a little bit about why they were against it, so to speak. I understand that you can only look back with this new legislation. You can only look back about 3 years to see if the person has had a conviction the past 3 years. So if I did something 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, that's no longer accessible, and a lot of landlords
Right.
took issue with that. Did you think that that was reasonable at all? Did you think, as a landlord, that was unfair for them to sort of hold that?
Well, I thought that that was reasonable because initially it was 7 years.
Wow.
We whittled it down to 3 years. Originally, the look back was 7. So of course, I think 3 years is fair. And when you think about what the landlords actually had fair point. I'm a landlord, so in that I have had some tenants who've come through that have been horrible. Right? They were just they didn't appear like that at the application process, but it just was not good, tore up the place. And then I had to start thinking about how am I screening people? Well, when you start asking questions like that, I knew, given where my housing is, that in Lawndale, 70% of the males 18 to 45 are ex-incarcerated.
Oh, wow.
So I knew that I may have had people who had a brush with the law in the past. So the majority of the people that I rented to have had that. But you will make an assumption that they won't rip up the place, and that is what some of the landlords and realtors were saying when they were there. They want to maintain their investment. They don't want problems because some can be problems, so forth and so on. So I got it.
Okay, and if there are people watching who find themselves in the predicament that we're discussing right now, they have been arrested or they have been convicted of something and now they're trying to find a home and it's difficult and they're not able to plug into this amendment, what should they do? Or who should they call?
Well, there is a number to call. I don't have it handy right now, but I'll tell you what, having to call either my office or Commissioner Johnson's office. My office number is area code 312-603-3019. And certainly we'll make sure that they get the number to the respective authority to call.
Okay, okay, excellent. Now, another thing I learned as I was researching for this story, a little birdie told me that this was a cause that you championed. And you heard about this and you immediately wanted to help, even as a landlord. And I'm curious to know why this was so personal to you and why this was something that you really wanted to do. I know you said that a lot of the people in your community find themselves in this predicament, but what made you really take up the mantle on this?
I think it's because most of my work is has been around helping ex-incarcerated men and women, and I knew that this cause will be one that would help them. And I'm still doing stuff to help ex-incarcerated men and women. It's been my life's work has been reentry and helping people to get back on their feet. I mean, I think that our society, this country, has penalized individuals who have a background, and really it's double jeopardy, making them pay twice for a crime that they committed. They served their time, let them come out, get on the books, become taxpaying citizens, instead of having all these X mark the spots in front of them and not allowing them to proceed on. So because of that, I was gung ho about jumping on board and putting every single contact I had in place behind this and spending a lot of energy and time behind it as well, because those are my people.
So, as I stated before, we rolled this out in Cook County January 1 of this year. How, in the midst of a pandemic, to your knowledge, has the rollout gone? Have you seen more people who have backgrounds to be able to find housing?
Well, I think as it rolled out, that there were some bugs, and of course, COVID has slowed everything down. But I think we have seen this proceed as good as to be expected, given that we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Okay, so what are some things, specifically, what are some things that we'd like to see? Because I know that you say you chair the Human Rights Commission, and I know that you would have to
Yes.
work with the Cook County Assessor's Office to try to get some of this going. How has that relationship worked in terms of you all being able to really work together to get this program moving forward?
I think it's worked splendidly. I think I got to know during our campaigning process for office, I got to know our assessor very well because for whatever reason, we have to be at the same stops all the time. I got to know him well, so I have a existing relationship with him already, and I think that that has worked out well. He was open to why this was important. I think Brandon had Commissioner Johnson had some great relationships as well with the assessor and some others. I think relationships are everything. Even if people don't want to do it, they'll do it because of the relationship with you. And I think that was a key point in this legislation and his openness and being willing to work with us.
Okay, okay. So I want to pivot slightly away from this to
Okay.
talk about another pressing issue happening right now across really the country, but particularly here in Cook County. How is the census rollout
Okay.
going?
That was a pivot. Um, I think well, let me step back a minute. I am co-chair or vice chair, one of the vice chairs of the census for Cook County, the Census Commission for Cook County. Um, one second. Yeah. For the census count in Cook County. And we have been rolling it out. The thing that we were this goes back actually to somewhat of just housing, because the people that we are attempting to reach most are what are called HTC or hard to count communities, and they happen to be Black folks, and they happen to be brown folks who are not getting counted, and so um, I think Illinois is representative of about 55% nationwide. I think we're like number 7 or 8 in the nation for counting. But I don't pay attention to that because the hard to serve communities are at 43%. So Lawndale is 43%. Inglewood is 43%. Auburn Gresham is 47%. So we got a lot of work to do for our hard to count communities. Cook County put $4 million out there. Chicago put $5 million out there. I was in the fight for the state of Illinois, which helped us to get $32 million for outreach services. And we're trying to outreach those hard to count communities and help them to, number one, get counted. Because in 2010, the group that was counted the less was children 5 and under. So we got to get those people counted.
Okay, so you said something interesting that black folks, brown folks, we're typically hard to count. Why do you think that is?
Mm.
Why don't we want to do the census? Are we conspiracy theorists? We don't trust it? What do you know about why we don't do this?
Look, all of the above. And I'm going to tell you, in full transparency, there was a time that I wasn't filling out the census. I mean, we just have to be honest. And the reason why is the reason that I admonish others to do it now. It was a lack of education about the census. And for real, black people want to know how something is going to actually touch them. And so we have to craft our message to help them, see how the census touches them. So what I say to them when I go out and I do these PSA things, in fact, I did one with my daughter just a little bit ago. Um, I tell them, listen, you see those potholes in your street out there, census, right? The books in your kids' school, census. The broke down schools in our community, census. When you complete your census, you're telling them that you exist in this neighborhood and they need to fix it up. So, because our neighborhoods, we have not filled out the census historically, a lot of us haven't, then the federal government sees us as invisible. They don't even know that we exist. And so they can't send the funding our way. Each one of us, Sylvia, represent $1,400 per year. That's $14,000 every 10 years. That's $14,000 per person. And then we count that times 100, that comes up to whatever it does. My math is off,
I studied
but it's a lot
journalism.
of
I
money.
can't help either. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But we know that it comes up to a lot of money. So I like to tell people you need to represent your $1,400. Make sure your kid represents their $1,400 so that we can get the things that we need in our communities. It impact your representation at the congressional level. So you need to make sure that you fill out your census. But not only that, when we want economic development taking place in our community, TIF funds and other types of funds that will help us put stores, movie theaters, coffee shops, so forth and so on in our community, all that comes from census. And so when we put it like that for people, they ready to go sign up. In fact, we're having a big bike the drive in North Lawndale and Douglas. And we're going to have all our census people out. We're going to have everybody with their bikes out, food, and all of that good stuff. The Alderman is the major sponsor. I'm part of it as well, and some others. But it's about not only having fun, but helping individuals to um, fill out the census. And there are going to be people out there doing outreach for the census.
Okay, so with that, I really, really, really do want to thank you for taking the time to be here, Commissioner Deere. Is there anything else at all you'd like us to know about either the census or the Just Housing Amendment?
Well, I'll leave with my quote that I always say: "It ain't justice; it's just us that keep on getting left out. We don't want you to get left out." And in the words of Socrates, if you always do what you've always done, you're gonna always get what you've always got. Now that's the definition of insanity. But wait a minute, there's a dearism. In order for you to get something you never had, you got to do something you never done.
All right.
I'll leave you with that.
I'll take it. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank everyone who watched As these developments continue to happen in our city, in our county, in our state, CAN TV will be here. I promise to keep you informed and up to date. Please watch the space. There's so much more to come. Thank you and have a great rest of the day.